My name is Sarah Mitchell, and if you'd asked me 3 years ago whether I believed in setting boundaries with family, I would have laughed and said, of course. But belief and practice are two entirely different things, especially when the family in question is your husband's mother, and your husband has spent his entire life trying to earn her approval. It started innocently enough. When Daniel and I got married, his mother, Patricia, seemed thrilled. She hugged me at the wedding, told me I looked beautiful, and welcomed me into the family with what I thought was genuine warmth. We'd dated for 2 years before the wedding, but Patricia lived 3 states away in Ohio, so our interactions had been limited to holidays and video calls. She always seemed pleasant, if a bit particular about how things should be done. The problems began 6 months after our wedding, when Patricia's husband Daniel's father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Daniel, being the devoted son he was, immediately invited his mother to stay with us for a little while until she figured out her next steps. I supported the decision completely. She'd just lost her life partner of 35 years. Of course, she needed family around her. That little while stretched from weeks into months, and those months revealed a side of Patricia I'd never encountered before. It started with small things. She'd reorganize the pantry while I was at work, moving everything from where I'd carefully placed it. When I came home to find my spices alphabetized and my baking supplies relocated to a different cabinet entirely, she smiled and said, I noticed things were a bit chaotic, dear. I thought I'd help. I thanked her, even though chaotic felt like a slap in the face. My kitchen had been organized exactly how I wanted it: functional, familiar, mine. Then came the comments about my cooking. Daniel's always loved pot roast the way I make it, she'd say, watching me prepare dinner. I use a different cut of meat, and more vegetables. Would you like me to show you? I'd smile tightly and say, maybe another time, Patricia. But the maybe another times kept coming. My parenting style wasn't quite right. My choice of preschool for our daughter Emma was interesting. My laundry folding method was inefficient. Even my career, I'm a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized firm, became fodder for her subtle disapproval. It must be so hard, working full-time with a young child, she'd sigh, as if I were neglecting Emma by having a career. When I raised Daniel, I was always home. I think children need that constant presence, don't you? Daniel, bless him, seemed oblivious. When I tried to bring up my concerns, he'd look confused and say, she's just trying to help, Sarah. She's lonely. Dad just died. Can't you be a little more understanding? Understanding. That word became my prison. I understood she was grieving. I understood she was displaced. I understood that Daniel loved his mother and wanted to support her. What I didn't understand was why my understanding had to come at the cost of my peace, my home, and my dignity. The situation reached a new level 3 months into Patricia's stay. It was a Saturday morning in early fall, and I'd planned a special day with Emma. We were going to make Halloween decorations together, something she'd been excited about all week. I'd bought construction paper, googly eyes, glitter, the works. I came downstairs to find Patricia and Emma already at the kitchen table, surrounded by craft supplies. But not my supplies. Patricia had gone out and bought her own better quality materials, as she explained when she saw my face. I thought we'd get started early, Patricia said cheerfully. Emma was so excited, weren't you, sweetheart? Emma nodded, already elbow deep in Patricia's project, following her grandmother's very specific instructions about how to cut the paper, where to place the decorations, and how much glue to use. I had plans with Emma today, I said, my voice tight. Oh, I know, dear. I'm helping you. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. You work so hard all week. I thought you'd appreciate me taking something off your plate. That was her genius. Really. Every intrusion was framed as help. Every boundary violation was presented as thoughtfulness. How could I be upset with someone who was just trying to make my life easier? Daniel wandered in, coffee cup in hand, and kissed my cheek. Mom's amazing with Emma, isn't she? Look at those decorations. I looked at my daughter, happily creating under Patricia's watchful eye, and felt something crack inside my chest. This wasn't about craft projects. This was about Patricia slowly, methodically erasing my role in my own family, replacing me piece by piece while everyone applauded her helpfulness. That afternoon, while Patricia took Emma to the park, another plan made without consulting me, sat Daniel down for a serious conversation. Your mother needs to find her own place, I said. It's been 3 months. She's had time to grieve with us, but now she needs to start rebuilding her own life. Daniel's face fell. Sarah, she's my mom. She just lost Dad. I can't kick her out. I'm not asking you to kick her out. I'm asking you to help her find her own home. There's a difference. She's not ready. She's still so sad. And I'm understanding of that. But Daniel, she's taking over. She reorganizes everything, criticizes how I do things, and now she's making plans with our daughter without even asking me. Daniel sighed, running his hand through his dark hair. She's just trying to be useful. She feels like a burden, Sarah. Can you imagine how hard that is for her? She's trying to earn her keep by undermining me. That's not what she's doing. You're being oversensitive. Oversensitive. Another word that became a weapon. That night, lying in bed while Daniel slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered how I'd become the villain in my own home. How had standing up for myself transformed into being how had wanting space in my own kitchen become selfishness? I didn't have answers, but I knew something had to change. The holidays arrived like an approaching storm. Patricia had been living with us for 6 months by the time Thanksgiving rolled around. And she'd transformed from temporary houseguest into permanent fixture. She had her routines, her preferred spot on the couch, her opinions about everything from my choice of hand soap to the shows I let Emma watch. We're hosting Thanksgiving, Patricia announced one evening in early November. Not asked. Announced. I looked up from helping Emma with a puzzle. Yes, I've already called Daniel's aunts and cousins. They're so excited to see me. It's been so long since we've all been together. And since I'm here. She spread her hands as if the conclusion was obvious. Patricia, we usually go to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. Oh, but surely they'll understand. It's different now that I'm living here. It makes sense for everyone to come to us. Daniel walked in at that moment, and Patricia immediately turned to him. Daniel, honey, you think it's a wonderful idea to host Thanksgiving, don't you? Having the whole family together here? Daniel looked between us, sensing tension but unclear on its source. Ah, sure, Mom, that sounds nice. Patricia beamed. See, it's settled. It wasn't settled. It wasn't anything close to settled, but I'd learned that arguing in front of Daniel meant becoming the bad guy. So I waited until we were alone in our bedroom that night. You can't just agree to things without discussing them with me first, I said, keeping my voice level. It's Thanksgiving, Sarah. It's just a dinner. It's not just a dinner. It's my family's tradition that your mother is replaced without even asking. And you backed her up without consulting me. She's excited about something for the first time since Dad died. Would it kill you to be flexible? Flexible, understanding, patient, oversensitive. The vocabulary of my erasure kept expanding. Fine, I said, we'll host Thanksgiving, but I'm cooking. Daniel nodded, probably relieved. The fight was over. Of course, that's totally fair, but Patricia had other plans. Over the next 2 weeks, she took over every aspect of Thanksgiving preparation. She planned the menu, bought the groceries, and began cooking days in advance all while I was at work. When I tried to participate, she'd smile and say, "Oh, I've got this covered, dear, you just relax." The day before Thanksgiving, my mother called. So, we're not seeing you tomorrow. The hurt in her voice was palpable. I'm sorry, Mom. Patricia made these plans without asking, and Daniel, it's fine. Sarah, you have obligations there too. Your dad and I understand. But they didn't understand. Not really. How could they? I barely understood how I'd lost control of my own life. Thanksgiving Day was a parade of Patricia's triumph. 18 relatives descended on our home, and Patricia held court as a queen returned to her throne. The food was impeccable. Had to give her that. Every dish was perfectly prepared, beautifully presented, and enthusiastically praised by the guests. Patricia, you haven't lost your touch. This is just like the Thanksgivings when we were kids. Daniel, you're so lucky to have your mother here with you. I served the meal Patricia had cooked, in the home I paid half the mortgage on, to people who barely acknowledged my presence. I was the helper. The hostess is in name only. Emma sat between Patricia and Daniel, soaking up her grandmother's attention. Grandma Pat says I'm her special helper, Emma announced proudly. That's wonderful, sweetheart, I managed, though my smile felt painted on. After dinner, while I was loading the dishwasher, I overheard Patricia talking to Daniel's Aunt Carol in the living room. It's been an adjustment, Patricia was saying, her voice carrying that particular tone of noble suffering. Living here, I mean, I try to help out as much as I can. Sarah's so busy with work, you know. I worry about Emma sometimes. With both parents working, children need stability and presence. You're doing a wonderful thing, Patricia. Daniel's lucky you're here to help. I gripped the plate in my hand so hard I thought it might shatter. This was Patricia's true art, not just undermining me, but rewriting the entire narrative so that she was the hero and I was the neglectful mother who needed her intervention. That night, after everyone had left and Emma was in bed, I found Daniel in his home office, responding to work emails. "We need to talk about your mother," I said. "Sarah, not tonight. I'm exhausted." "I'm exhausted, too, Daniel. I'm exhausted from living in a house where I'm constantly made to feel inadequate. I'm exhausted from being replaced in my daughter's life. I'm exhausted from being dismissed every time I try to address this." Daniel finally looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something flicker across his face. Discomfort, maybe. Recognition. But then he shook his head. "You're making this bigger than it is. Mom hosted a nice Thanksgiving. Why is that such a problem?" "Because it's not just Thanksgiving. It's everything. Every single day, she takes something else from me, and you let her." "I let her grieve in a safe place. I let her feel useful after losing her husband." "Why is that wrong?" "Because it's destroying our marriage." The words burst out of me, louder than I'd intended. "Can't you see that? She's driving a wedge between us, and you're helping her do it." Daniel stood up, his jaw tight. "That's not fair. You're asking me to choose between my wife and my mother?" "I'm asking you to choose your wife and child. I'm asking you to see that your mother isn't just grieving, she's taking over. And if you can't see that, or won't see it, then we have a much bigger problem than I thought." We stood there, facing each other across a gulf that seemed to widen with every conversation. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice cold. "Maybe you're just jealous that Emma loves spending time with her grandmother." The words hit like a physical blow. I stared at my husband, this man I'd built a life with, and realized he truly couldn't see it, or wouldn't. "Maybe you're right," I whispered. "Maybe I am jealous. Jealous that your mother gets to raise my daughter while I work to pay for the house she's living in. Jealous that she gets to make decisions about my family without consequence. Jealous that my own husband defends her instead of me." I walked out before he could respond. I couldn't bear to hear another excuse, another accusation of oversight, another defense of Patricia's helpfulness. That was the night I realized something crucial. This situation wouldn't change unless I changed it. Daniel wasn't going to suddenly see the light. Patricia wasn't going to voluntarily back off. If I wanted my life back, I was going to have to take it. But I needed proof. I needed something undeniable, something even Daniel couldn't explain away. And I was willing to wait for it. December brought early snow to our suburban Chicago neighborhood and a new level of tension to our household. Daniel and I were barely speaking except when necessary, conducting our marriage with cold efficiency. Patricia, sensing the strain, became even more helpful, more present, more indispensable. "You two need a date night," she announced one Friday evening. "I'll watch Emma. You go out, reconnect. Every marriage needs nurturing." I wanted to laugh at the irony. The woman causing the problem was now offering to solve it, but Daniel latched onto the idea immediately. "That's a great idea, Mom. Sarah, what do you think?" I thought it was performative nonsense, but I was tired of fighting. "Sure, that sounds nice." We went to our favorite Italian restaurant, the one where Daniel had proposed 3 years earlier. We sat across from each other in the dim lighting, surrounded by couples who seemed genuinely happy, and tried to remember how to talk to each other. "I hate this," Daniel said finally. "This distance between us. I miss you. I miss you too. I miss us. Then, can we please find a way past this? Can we compromise?" There was that word again. Compromise. As if what was being asked of me was reasonable, balanced, and fair. "What does compromise look like to you, Daniel?" He reached across the table, taking my hand. "Give Mom a little more time. 6 more months. By then, she'll be ready to get her own place. She's already talking about it. 6 more months. Half a year. 180 more days of being a stranger in my own home. And in those 6 months, what changes? Does she stop making decisions without consulting us? Does she stop undermining my parenting? Does she start treating me like an equal instead of an inconvenience?" Daniel pulled his hand back. "That's not fair. She doesn't treat you like an inconvenience." "Then what would you call it?" We drove home in silence. The date night, like so many other things Patricia touched, had crumbled into dust. The breakthrough came 3 days later, on a Monday afternoon. I'd left work early with a headache, hoping to pick up Emma from preschool myself, for once Patricia had taken over that duty as well. But when I pulled into our driveway 30 minutes before pickup time, I found Patricia's car still there. I walked into the house quietly, planning to take some medicine and lie down before leaving for school. That's when I heard Patricia's voice coming from the kitchen. She was on the phone, and I froze in the hallway when I heard my name. I know, Carol. It's been challenging. Sarah's just so resistant to help. I'm doing my best, but she makes everything difficult. I edged closer, my heart pounding. The truth is, I don't think she's equipped to handle everything. Work, motherhood, keeping a home, it's too much for her. That's why I'm here. Really, Emma needs someone stable and present. Patricia paused, listening. Oh, Daniel sees it. He's starting to understand that Emma might be better off with more of my influence. He hasn't said it directly, but I can tell. My breath caught. This wasn't just criticism. This was a campaign. I'm thinking I'll just stay permanently. Daniel won't ask me to leave, he's too kind. And honestly, between you and me, I think this marriage might not last anyway. Sarah's so career-focused, so rigid. When it falls apart, at least I'll be here for Emma and Daniel. That little girl needs consistency. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and started recording. Patricia continued. I've been documenting some things. Times when Sarah comes home late. When she's too tired to play with Emma. When she snaps at Daniel. Just in case it becomes relevant later. You understand, a grandmother has to protect her grandchild. Documenting. Carol's voice was audible now. Patricia, that seems extreme. It's prudent. Carol, if this marriage dissolves, I want to make sure Emma ends up in the right environment. With Daniel. And with me. I stood there, recording every word, as Patricia laid out her long-term strategy. This wasn't about grief or adjustment. This was about replacement. She'd been systematically undermining me, creating a narrative of my inadequacy, positioning herself as the superior mother figure, all while preparing for a future where I was marginalized or removed entirely from my daughter's life. When she finally hung up, I stepped into the kitchen doorway. Hello, Patricia. She spun around, her face blanching. Sarah, I didn't hear you come in. I gathered that. I held up my phone. I've heard enough, though. Every word. Patricia's expression cycled through shock, fear, and finally settled on defiance. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard you admit to documenting my supposed failures as a mother. I heard you say you're planning to stay here permanently without our consent. I heard you tell your sister that you're hoping my marriage falls apart so you can have better access to my daughter. Should I play it back for you? You're taking things out of context. Stop. My voice was steel. Stop lying. Stop manipulating. Stop pretending this has anything to do with grief or helping. You've been running a campaign to take over my family, and it ends today. Patricia drew herself up, and for a moment, I saw the real woman behind the helpful facade. That little girl deserves better than a part-time mother who's more concerned with her career than her daughter's well-being. That little girl has a mother who loves her, provides for her, and would do anything for her. What she doesn't need is a grandmother who uses her as a pawn to maintain control. Daniel won't believe you. He knows I only want what's best for Emma. Then let's ask him. I called Daniel right there, putting the phone on speaker. When he answered, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Daniel, I need you to come home right now. It's about your mother. It's urgent. Sarah, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I just caught your mother on the phone telling your Aunt Carol that she's hoping our marriage falls apart so she can help you raise Emma without me. I have a recording. Come home now. There was a long silence. Then, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Patricia and I stood in the kitchen, not speaking, the air thick with tension. She tried once to say something, but I held up my hand. Save it for Daniel. When Daniel walked through the door, his face was pale. What's going on? I played the recording. All of it. We watched as Daniel's expression transformed from confusion to disbelief to horror. When Patricia's voice described documenting my failures and planning for the dissolution of my marriage, Daniel actually staggered backward, gripping the counter for support. Mom, he said when the recording ended, tell me this isn't real. Tell me there's some explanation. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I was just venting. Honey, you know how it is, sometimes you say things you don't mean when you're frustrated. Sarah's been so difficult about my being here, and I was just processing my feelings with Carol. You said you were documenting things. You said you were planning to stay permanently without asking. You said you were hoping our marriage would fail. Daniel's voice cracked. How is that venting? I'm your mother. I'm trying to protect you and Emma from a situation that clearly isn't working. Protect us. You're destroying us. Daniel's hands were shaking. I defended you. Over and over, I defended you. I told Sarah she was overreacting, that you were just grieving, that she needed to be more understanding. And this whole time, you were... He couldn't finish the sentence. He looked at me, and I saw something break open in his eyes: recognition, shame, horror at what he'd enabled. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Patricia stepped forward. Daniel, please. You're my son. You're all I have left. No. Daniel's voice was firm now. You need to leave. Pack your things. I'll help you find a place. But you can't stay here anymore. You can't throw me out. I'm your mother. You're right. You're my mother, and I love you. But my wife and daughter come first, and I should have remembered that months ago. Daniel looked at me, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I'm sorry I made you doubt yourself. I'm sorry I didn't listen. You were right about everything. Patricia moved out 3 days later. Daniel rented her a furnished apartment across town and helped her move her belongings, but the warmth that had once defined their relationship was gone, replaced by something cautious and wounded. The weeks that followed were strange and quiet. Our house felt empty despite having fewer people in it, like we were all adjusting to a new gravity. Emma asked about Grandma Pat several times, and I had to navigate the complicated truth of what had happened. Grandma needed her own space, I told her gently, but we can still visit sometimes. Did I do something wrong? Emma asked, her 5-year-old face crumpled with worry. Oh, sweetheart, no. None of this is about you. This is grown-up stuff that Daddy and I needed to work out. You are loved, and you're safe. And nothing changes that. Daniel and I attended couples counseling. In our second session, he finally broke down and admitted how he'd failed to protect our family. I was so afraid of disappointing her, he said, tears streaming down his face. My whole life, I worked to be the son she wanted. I couldn't see that protecting her feelings meant abandoning my wife. Our therapist, Dr. Chen, nodded. It's common for adult children to struggle with setting boundaries with parents. The fear of disappointing them, of being seen as ungrateful or disloyal, can be paralyzing. But Daniel, what's the cost of that fear been? Everything, Daniel said quietly, looking at me. Almost everything. The healing was slow. There were nights when I'd wake up angry, reliving all the moments when Daniel had chosen his mother's feelings over mine. There were days when the resentment felt like a living thing inside me, burning and bitter. But there were also moments of progress. Daniel started saying no to Patricia's calls when they came at dinner time. He established boundaries about visits once a week, and only when both of us had agreed to it. He attended every school event for Emma, every parent-teacher conference, every moment he'd previously delegated to his mother. And slowly, gradually, we found our way back to each other. 4 months after Patricia left, we were having dinner as a family when Emma said something that made me freeze with my fork halfway to my mouth. I'm glad it's just us now, she said I love Grandma Pat, but I like having mommy time. Mommy time, I echoed. Emma nodded. Grandma Pat always wanted to do things her way, but you let me be creative and make mistakes and have fun. That's better. Daniel caught my eye across the table, and something passed between us. Understanding, vindication, relief. That evening, after Emma was in bed, Daniel pulled me onto the couch beside him. I read something in one of the books Dr. Chen recommended, he said, about how manipulation works slowly, almost invisibly. Like a frog in boiling water, the temperature rises so gradually that you don't realize you're being cooked until it's too late. That's exactly what it felt like, I said softly. Every day, just a little bit more, until I couldn't recognize my own life. I let that happen. I was so worried about being a good son that I forgot about being a good husband, a good father. Daniel took my hand. I know I can't undo the past 6 months, but I need you to know that I see it now. I see what she did, and I see what I allowed, and I'm going to spend however long it takes proving that you and Emma come first. I don't need proof, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I just need a partnership. I need to know that when there's a conflict, you'll at least listen to my side, that I won't have to fight alone. Never again, Daniel promised. We're a team. That's how it should have been from the beginning. We maintained a cautious relationship with Patricia. She saw Emma once a week, but always in public places, the park, a restaurant, the children's museum. She was never alone with our daughter. And she never came to our house unless we'd planned it together as a family. Patricia apologized, eventually. 6 months after moving out, she sat across from me in a coffee shop and said the words I'd never expected to hear. I was wrong. About everything. I convinced myself I was helping, but I was really just trying to stay relevant, to not be forgotten like I felt when my husband died. She looked down at her hands. I treated you terribly. I tried to replace you, and I nearly destroyed my relationship with my son in the process. Why are you telling me this now? I asked carefully. Therapy, she said with a rueful smile. Daniel insisted on it if I wanted to maintain contact with Emma. My therapist helped me see what I was really doing. The control, the manipulation, the narrative I'd built where I was the hero. It's painful to face, but necessary. I appreciate you saying that. I'd like to rebuild, if possible, not to what it was that was toxic, but something healthier. Something that respects boundaries and acknowledges that Emma is your daughter, not mine. That you and Daniel are a family unit, and I'm a guest in that unit, not a co-pilot. It took time. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal quickly, but gradually, carefully, we found a new equilibrium. Patricia became a grandmother instead of a surrogate mother. She asked before making plans. She complimented instead of criticizing. She attended our family events as a guest, not a hostess. Was it perfect? No. There were still moments when I saw the old Patricia flash through the urge to control, the instinct to take over. But now, when those moments came, Daniel was there beside me, a united front, and Patricia would catch herself and back down. 1 year after that devastating confrontation in my kitchen, we celebrated Thanksgiving at my parents' house. Patricia was invited to, and she sat at the table with my mother and father, laughing at my dad's terrible jokes and genuinely complimenting my mother's sweet potato casserole. As I looked around the table at my daughter coloring contentedly, at my husband who'd finally learned to prioritize his marriage, at my mother-in-law who was learning to respect boundaries, at my parents who'd waited patiently for our family to heal, I felt something I hadn't felt in over a year: peace. That night, getting ready for bed, Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind as I stood at the bathroom mirror. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For not giving up. For fighting for our family, even when I made it so hard. For being stronger than I was." I turned in his arms, looking up at him. I didn't feel strong. Most days, I felt like I was drowning. But you didn't drown. You stood up. You set a boundary. You ended something that was destroying us. He kissed my forehead. "You saved our family, Sarah. I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for that." As I lay in bed that night, my husband's arm around me, my daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall, my home finally feeling like mine again, I thought about all the women out there who might be living the story I'd lived. The ones being told they're oversensitive, that they're not understanding enough, that they're making problems where none exist. I wanted them to know what I'd learned, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, that boundaries aren't cruelty, that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to let any one of in well-meaning family members dismantle what you've built. My mother-in-law tried to run my family, but in the end, it was the family she underestimated mine that stood firm and reclaimed what was always ours. The power to choose our own story, the courage to defend our own space, and the strength to say, finally and firmly, enough.